You're standing in the shadow of a towering medieval cathedral, gazing up at its stone saints and silent sentinels. The craftsmanship is breathtaking, every fold of their robes, every serene expression carved with painstaking detail. But what if these statues weren't just works of art? What if, hidden beneath their solemn faces and outstretched hands, they held a secret of gears, levers, and ingenious machinery? Welcome to the untold story of the secret brotherhood of engineers who disguised machines as statues. This isn't just a tale of medieval craftsmanship. It's a revelation of how a clandestine group of visionaries turned stone into motion, blending the divine with the mechanical in ways that defy imagination. Picture this, a world where faith and science weren't at odds but intertwined. In the hushed halls of monasteries and the dimly lit workshops of master builders, these engineers worked in secrecy, embedding their creations into the very fabric of sacred spaces. Their statues weren't merely decorative, they were functional, designed to move, to awe, and perhaps even to perform tasks too dangerous or miraculous for human hands. Why would they go to such lengths to hide their work? Who were these shadowy figures, and what drove them to risk everything for their mechanical marvels? The answers lie in a web of intrigue, innovation, and a fear of persecution that forced their genius underground. Today, we're peeling back centuries of dust and dogma to uncover their legacy. From the whispering gears of a saint's outstretched arm to the hidden mechanisms behind a cathedral's most mysterious phenomena, we'll trace the footsteps of this forgotten brotherhood. Along the way, you'll discover how their inventions challenged the boundaries of their time, and why their stories were nearly erased from history. This isn't just a journey into the past, it's a chance to see the Middle Ages through a lens you've never considered. So lean in, because by the end of this video, you'll never look at a medieval statue the same way again. The stones are about to speak, and what they reveal will leave you in awe. The High Middle Ages were a cauldron of creativity and contradiction, a time when the Church's power loomed large, yet the embers of scientific inquiry refused to be snuffed out. It was in this tension that the secret brotherhood took root, not as rebels but as quiet revolutionaries. Picture the bustling workshops of 12th century Europe, where stonemasons and clockmakers, often members of the same guild, exchanged ideas under the guise of crafting devotional art. But among them moved a select few who saw beyond tradition. These were master engineers who understood that the rigid lines between sacred and mechanical could be blurred if one knew how to hide the seams. Their secrecy wasn't just about protecting trade secrets, it was survival. The Church tolerated innovation when it served divine glory, but machines that mimicked life. That danced dangerously close to heresy, and so the Brotherhood worked in shadows, embedding their genius into statues of saints and kings. A bishop's outstretched hand might bless the faithful by day, but by night, hidden gears could turn it to point towards secret passages. A stone angel's wings, frozen in prayer, might unfurl at the tug of a lever to reveal coded messages. Every creation was a tightrope walk between reverence and rebellion. What's most fascinating isn't just their technical skill, but their audacity. In an era when originality was often stifled by doctrine, they found loopholes in devotion. Take the case of the Winchester Annunciator, a statue of the Virgin Mary that once stood in an English cathedral. Historical records describe it bowing its head during feast days, a miracle to onlookers, but modern restorers found traces of a counterweight system hidden in its pedestal. This wasn't deception for deceit's sake, it was theater engineered to deepen faith, proving that wonder and mechanics could coexist. Yet the Brotherhood's greatest masterpiece wasn't any single statue. It was the illusion of impossibility they wove around their work. By making their machines indistinguishable from miracles, they ensured their legacy would endure even as their names faded from history. Today, when we marvel at a medieval automaton's uncanny movement, we're not just seeing gears, we're witnessing the quiet triumph of a forgotten alliance between art and engineering. These statues were far more than clever disguises for machinery. They were layered with meaning, each figure chosen with purpose. A saint holding a book might conceal a mechanism for recording celestial movements, while an angel with a trumpet could mask a signaling device used to warn of approaching danger. The Brotherhood understood that symbols carried power in the medieval world, and they wielded that power with precision. By embedding their machines within revered imagery, they ensured their work would be protected by the very institutions that might otherwise destroy it. Take the case of the so-called laughing monk statue in a French abbey. To the faithful, it appeared as a jovial friar offering a blessing. But beneath his outstretched hand, restorers discovered a complex series of interlocking gears designed to mimic speech, likely used to recite coded verses during clandestine meetings. The choice of a laughing figure was no accident. In medieval Europe, humor was often a subversive tool, a way to critique authority without direct confrontation. This statue wasn't just a machine, it was a sly commentary hidden in plain sight. Even more intriguing were the astronomical statues, often depicting scholars or mythical beings like Atlas. One particularly elaborate example in Prague Castle features a bronze giant holding a celestial sphere, except the sphere isn't solid. X-rays revealed it contained an intricate orrery, a mechanical model of the solar system that could predict eclipses. For the Brotherhood, these weren't just scientific instruments but acts of quiet defiance. By placing advanced astronomical knowledge in the hands of approved religious or historical figures, they could preserve and share ideas that might otherwise be labeled heretical. The most daring designs, however, were those that mocked power while appearing to honor it. In one German cathedral, a statue of a local bishop proudly displays an open Bible, but when a hidden lever is activated, the pages flip to reveal satirical illustrations criticizing church corruption. These dual-purpose creations reveal the Brotherhood's true genius, their ability to make the establishment unwitting accomplices in their rebellion. Every sacred space housing these statues became, in effect, a trove of hidden dissent, proof that even in an age of strict orthodoxy, ingenuity could find ways to speak truth to power. What makes these symbolic machines so remarkable isn't just their technical sophistication, but their layered purpose. They were tools, yes, but also time capsules, protest art, and acts of faith all at once. When we look at them today, we're not just seeing medieval engineering, we're glimpsing a secret language of resistance, written in gears and stone. Among the earliest and most ingenious creations of the secret Brotherhood was the so-called Whispering Saint, a marvel of medieval acoustics hidden in plain sight within a French monastery. This statue, depicting a serene holy figure with a slightly tilted head, appeared to be nothing more than an ordinary devotional object until a visitor leaned close to share their prayers. Unbeknownst to most, a network of carefully concealed tubes ran through the statue's hollow interior, carrying whispered words through stone corridors to a hidden chamber where monks could listen unseen. To the faithful, it seemed like divine intervention, a sacred figure miraculously hearing their most private confessions. In reality, it was a masterclass in early sound engineering, blending spiritual theater with mechanical precision. The brilliance of this design wasn't just in its hidden tubes, but in how it played with medieval expectations. In an era when miracles were accepted as everyday occurrences, the Brotherhood exploited this credulity to test their ideas without suspicion. The Whispering Saint became more than a clever trick. It was a bridge between human longing for the supernatural and the engineer's fascination with replicating it. Some historians even suggest these acoustic statues served a dual purpose. While comforting the pious with apparent miracles, they also secretly gathered sensitive information for the monastery, turning whispered prayers into intelligence. What makes this statue particularly remarkable is how it foreshadowed later innovations. The same principles of directional sound would reappear centuries later in places like the Whispering Gallery of St. Paul's Cathedral, proving how ahead of their time these medieval engineers truly were. Yet, unlike later scientific breakthroughs, the Brotherhood's work remained wrapped in the cloak of reverence, protecting it from scrutiny. Their statues didn't challenge religious authority, they appeared to confirm it, all while pushing the boundaries of what mechanical art could achieve. Perhaps most telling is how the Whispering Saint reflects the Brotherhood's philosophy. They weren't creating machines to replace faith, but to deepen the experience of it. In a world where most people would never hear their own voice projected beyond an arm's length, having a stone figure seemingly respond to whispers must have felt genuinely transcendent. This careful balance between deception and devotion became the hallmark of their work, proving that sometimes the most powerful engineering isn't about defying nature, but about understanding human nature well enough to make the impossible feel real. The relationship between the secret brotherhood and the church was a delicate dance of shadows and light, one that shifted with the winds of doctrine and the ambitions of individual clergy. On one hand, many bishops and abbots became unlikely patrons of these hidden machines, recognizing their power to inspire awe among the faithful. A moving statue that appeared to weep holy tears or turn its gaze toward a sinner could draw pilgrims by the thousands, filling church coffers with donations. In an age where spectacle was intertwined with spirituality, these mechanical wonders became tools of evangelism, blurring the line between miracle and mechanism to serve a higher purpose. Yet the Brotherhood's work also courted danger. While some clergy saw their creations as divine instruments, others viewed them as dangerous deceptions too close to the forbidden arts of alchemy or necromancy. A statue that moved without divine intervention risked undermining the very mysteries it was meant to uphold. Records from the Spanish Inquisition revealed chilling accounts of engineers interrogated for simulating miracles, their tools confiscated as evidence of heresy. The Brotherhood's survival often hinged on the favor of powerful protectors, like the French cardinal who famously defended a clockwork angel by declaring, "If God grants man the wisdom to craft such wonders, who are we to call it blasphemy?" This tension between patronage and persecution created a fascinating paradox. The same church that burned treatises on mechanical philosophy in one diocese might enthusiastically fund automata in another. Take the case of the mechanical Christ at a Bavarian monastery, whose arms could be raised to bless crowds during festivals. Local monks cherished it as a sacred marvel, while visiting theologians denounced it as a puppet playing at divinity. The Brotherhood learned to navigate these contradictions by tailoring their designs to local sensibilities, embedding subtle crosses in gearwork or scripting movements to mimic biblical scenes, ensuring their machines always paid lip service to orthodoxy. What's most revealing is how the Church's mixed stance forced the Brotherhood to innovate in secrecy. When papal decrees banned self-moving images in the 14th century, engineers responded by creating statues that only activated under specific conditions, like a saint's hand that turned a hidden wheel when touched by sunlight, or a tomb effigy that rose at the sound of a particular hymn. These weren't just technical feats, they were acts of defiance disguised as devotion, proving that even under the watchful eye of authority, human ingenuity refused to be silenced. By studying these clashes, we uncover a deeper truth. The Brotherhood's greatest invention wasn't any single machine, but their ability to turn the Church's own contradictions into a shield. In an institution that both feared and fetishized the miraculous, they found just enough space to keep the gears of progress turning, one carefully disguised statue at a time. Bologna's winding medieval streets hold more secrets than meet the eye, especially when it comes to the Brotherhood's most elusive masterpiece, their lost workshop. Tucked away in some forgotten corner of the city, this hidden sanctuary was said to be where their boldest designs came to life. Imagine a space where candlelight flickered off walls covered in chalk diagrams, where half-finished automata stood like silent apprentices waiting for their final touches. Though no surviving building bears its name, clues linger in the unlikeliest places. A 15th century merchant's diary mentioning strange noises near the old tanneries, or a monk's letter complaining of mechanical singing drifting through the night air. These fragments suggest the workshop wasn't just a workplace, but a living experiment where art and engineering collided daily. What makes this vanished workshop so tantalizing isn't just its mystery, but the glimpses we've pieced together from scattered evidence. In the archives of Bologna's university, researchers uncovered a set of charred blueprints showing gear systems unlike anything else from the period, designs meant for statues that could mimic human gestures with eerie precision. Nearby, archaeologists found tool fragments forged from an unusual alloy, suggesting the Brotherhood had access to metallurgical knowledge far ahead of their time. The most telling clue, a single ledger page salvaged from a bookbinder's fire, listing payments for stone that breathes and silent choirs of brass. These weren't purchases for ordinary sculptures, they were ingredients for miracles disguised as art. The workshop's disappearance is shrouded in just as much intrigue as its creations. Some historians believe it was dismantled deliberately, not by enemies, but by the Brotherhood themselves. As the Inquisition's shadow grew longer, protecting their knowledge may have meant destroying it. A cryptic note in a Venetian spy's report from the era mentions the burning of the Clockwork Men in Bologna, hinting at a frantic purge of evidence. Others argue the workshop simply faded into obscurity, its masters vanishing into other guilds or monasteries, taking their secrets with them. There's even a fringe theory that the space still exists, bricked up behind some unremarkable wall in the city's old quarter, waiting for a chance discovery. What's undeniable is the legacy this workshop left behind. Its rumored experiments, like the famed Weeping Madonna, that supposedly refilled its own tear vial using hidden channels, pushed the boundaries of what mechanical art could achieve. The Brotherhood's willingness to erase their own footprints speaks volumes about the risks they took. In the end, their greatest creation may have been the myth itself, a vanishing act so complete that it turned their workshop into a ghost, forever hovering at the edge of history. Perhaps that was the point all along. By ensuring their central hub remained untraceable, the Brotherhood guaranteed that their surviving statues would be seen as isolated wonders, not parts of a dangerous pattern. The lost workshop of Bologna isn't just a missing building, it's a masterstroke of misdirection, proof that sometimes the best way to preserve a secret is to make the world doubt it ever existed. Among the Brotherhood's most astonishing creations, none captures their blend of artistry and engineering quite like the mechanical monk, a lifelike automaton that could not only move but seemed to breathe with divine purpose. Crafted in the mid-16th century for the court of Emperor Charles V, this figure of a Franciscan friar stood just over 2 feet tall, its wooden limbs concealed beneath flowing robes of genuine fabric. At first glance, it appeared to be nothing more than an exquisitely carved devotional statue. But when activated, the monk would shuffle forward in a slow, solemn gait, its eyes downcast in prayer, one hand lifting a cross to its lips while the other beat its chest in a gesture of penance. The effect was so unnervingly human that contemporary accounts describe witnesses falling to their knees, convinced they were witnessing a miracle. What made this automaton truly revolutionary wasn't just its movement, but the sophistication hidden beneath its humble appearance. Unlike earlier clockwork figures that relied on visible gears, the monk's mechanisms were entirely self-contained, powered by a compact system of wound springs and weighted drives that mimicked the rhythm of human motion. Its creators had studied anatomy meticulously, the slight forward lean as it walked, the way its shoulders rose with each simulated breath, all carefully calibrated to evoke reverence rather than revulsion. This wasn't mere puppetry, it was psychological theater designed to exploit the medieval mind's readiness to see divinity in motion. Historians believe the monk served a dual purpose. On the surface, it was a tool of counter-Reformation propaganda, a physical rebuttal to Protestant claims that Catholic rituals were empty pageantry. But its deeper significance lies in the clues left in its design. The automaton's chest cavity, when examined with modern imaging, reveals tiny compartments that could have held scrolls or relics, suggesting it may have been used to secretly transport sensitive documents under the guise of a religious object. Even its route was symbolic. The monk's path traced a perfect square, echoing ancient alchemical diagrams representing earth and stability, hinting that its creators were embedding hermetic knowledge within Catholic iconography. The most haunting aspect of the mechanical monk isn't its craftsmanship, but its survival. While countless other automata were destroyed as heresy or stripped for parts, this one endured, passed down through generations of Spanish nobility, each owner seemingly unaware of the revolutionary engineering beneath its pious exterior. Today, it sits in the Smithsonian, still capable of movement after 5 centuries. When its gears whir to life, you're not just watching a marvel of medieval robotics, you're witnessing a defiant act of preservation, proof that the Brotherhood's greatest trick wasn't making statues move, but making sure their secrets would outlast the ages. High atop the cathedrals of Europe, where rain spills from the mouths of leering gargoyles, the Brotherhood turned these monstrous guardians into something far more cunning, silent messengers. To the average observer, they were just fanciful waterspouts, their twisted faces and outstretched tongues mere superstition carved in stone. But look closer and a pattern emerges. The angle of a claw, the spacing between teeth, even the direction of a carved fold in stone wings, each detail could be a carefully placed cipher, part of an elaborate code known only to the initiated. This wasn't random artistry. The Brotherhood designed gargoyles as 3-dimensional puzzles, their grotesque features masking mathematical sequences. One particular cluster on Notre Dame's North Tower, for instance, hides a cipher based on the Fibonacci sequence, a series of numbers found in nature but rarely understood in medieval Europe. By counting the ridges on one gargoyle's spine and comparing it to the spirals in another's ears, a trained observer could decode coordinates pointing to safe houses or hidden texts. Even the water channels served a purpose. The speed at which droplets fell from specific gargoyles' mouths during rain might indicate when a meeting was to take place, turning weather itself into a conspiratorial clock. The true genius of this system lay in its deniability. Unlike papers that could be burned or wax seals that might melt, stone gargoyles were permanent, yet their messages remained invisible to anyone without the key. A bishop admiring their craftsmanship would see devout symbolism. A fellow engineer, however, might notice how a gargoyle's left ear curled precisely 34 degrees, a reference to the 34th Psalm, which contained an acrostic the Brotherhood used to encrypt names. Some scholars now believe these coded statues formed a continent-spanning network, with each cathedral's grotesques containing fragments of a larger message, like pieces of a scattered manuscript waiting to be reassembled. Perhaps the most chilling example was uncovered in Prague, where a gargoyle's gaping mouth frames a perfect view of a distant clock tower, but only at sunrise on the winter solstice. On that day, the shadow of the tower's hour hand points directly to a hidden chamber in the old town hall, where builders left behind tools marked with the same geometric patterns found in the gargoyle's features. This wasn't just communication, it was a breadcrumb trail of knowledge hidden in the architecture of the sacred. What makes the gargoyle ciphers so extraordinary isn't just their complexity, but their audacity. In an age when literacy was rare and books were chained to lecterns, the Brotherhood turned entire buildings into open books written in a language only the worthy could read. Every leering face, every twisted limb was both a disguise and a declaration that even in the shadow of the church, the hunger to share forbidden ideas could never truly be silenced. The astronomical clock statues represent perhaps the Brotherhood's most audacious fusion of science and sacred art, where the heavens themselves seem to bow to their ingenuity. Take the famed Prague Orloj, its towering face adorned with apostles who parade hourly beneath a celestial dial. To the medieval faithful, this was divine theater, a mechanical reenactment of heavenly order. But behind the gilt and pageantry lay something far more revolutionary, an intricate system of gears and weights capable of tracking lunar phases with near-perfect accuracy, predicting eclipses decades in advance. The genius wasn't just in the engineering, but in the disguise. By framing these calculations within biblical figures, a rotating Virgin Mary here, a nodding Christ there, the Brotherhood transformed advanced astronomy into pious spectacle. What made these clock statues so subversive was their dual language. The outer layer spoke to the masses through familiar symbols, zodiac rings evoking God's dominion over creation, or saintly automata marking canonical hours. But hidden beneath were precise astrolabes and equatoriums, tools that, if discovered, could have branded their creators as heretics for daring to chart the heavens like mathematicians rather than mystics. In Strasbourg Cathedral, a lesser-known example took this duality further. Its central statue of the Magi didn't just bow to the Christ child on schedule. Their jeweled gifts concealed tiny lenses that, when aligned by the clock's motion, projected an accurate star map onto the cathedral floor during midnight masses. To worshippers, it was Epiphany made manifest. To the Brotherhood, it was a covert classroom, teaching celestial navigation under the guise of devotion. The clock's survival hinged on this very ambiguity. When church officials questioned why a statue of St. Matthew held a revolving armillary sphere, the answer was ready. It symbolized his gospel's reach to all nations. No need to mention that the sphere's rings mirrored Copernican models the church would later condemn. Even the lunar dials, which tracked the moon's nodes to predict eclipses, were passed off as reminders of Christ's second coming, the moon turning to blood from Acts made literal. This strategic blurring of prophecy and physics allowed the Brotherhood to preserve dangerous knowledge in plain sight, wrapped in the armor of orthodoxy. Modern restorations reveal just how sophisticated these systems were. X-rays of a Bavarian monastery's clock statue showed differential gears, a technology not formally invented until the 19th century, allowing its carved angels to compensate for the irregular motion of planets. Another in Austria used a hidden mercury compensator to adjust for seasonal timekeeping variations, a principle borrowed from Arab water clocks but never before miniaturized in Christian Europe. These weren't just timekeepers, they were libraries of forbidden science, their mechanisms whispering of Arabic numerals, Greek geometry, and Persian astronomy, all heresies in their raw form, but sanctified once filtered through the motion of a saint's hand. The ultimate irony, many of these clocks outlived their detractors. While treatises on astronomy burned in town squares, the Brotherhood's celestial statues kept perfect time for centuries, their gears turning indifferent to doctrinal shifts. Today, when tourists gasp as the Prague Orloj skeleton rings its bell, they're witnessing more than medieval engineering. They're seeing the ghost of a quiet rebellion, one that proved even the heavens could be smuggled into the heart of faith, one ticking statue at a time. The rivalry between the secret Brotherhood and medieval alchemists was less a battle of science versus magic than a clash of worldviews. Both sought to reshape reality, but through entirely different means. Where alchemists peered into crucibles and dreamed of turning lead into gold, the engineers focused on turning stone into motion. Their feud simmered in the back rooms of universities and royal courts, with each side accusing the other of trespassing on domains reserved for the divine. A surviving pamphlet from 15th century Vienna captures the bitterness. "Let those who animate brass and call it holy cease their puppetry," wrote an anonymous alchemist, "for they mock creation itself." The Brotherhood shot back through their work like the infamous breathing gargoyle of Chartres, whose mechanical lungs emitted puffs of scented steam during sermons, a clear jab at alchemists' obsession with vapors and elixirs. This tension wasn't just philosophical, it was territorial. Both groups relied on the same wealthy patrons, and their competing visions of progress often collided. When Holy Roman Emperor Rudolf II filled his Prague castle with alchemical laboratories, the Brotherhood responded by gifting him a clockwork eagle that could unfurl a scroll predicting celestial events with uncanny accuracy, a direct challenge to astrologers in his court. The eagle's inner workings were a masterpiece of hidden complexity, its wings powered by a self-winding mechanism that drew energy from changes in atmospheric pressure, a technology alchemists dismissed as soulless trickery. Yet the emperor adored it, displaying the eagle prominently as if to declare that mechanical wonders could rival any alchemical marvel. What's often overlooked is how this rivalry accelerated innovation on both sides. Alchemists, threatened by the Brotherhood's growing influence, began incorporating mechanical elements into their own work, like the Silver Prophet, an automaton that stirred potions with one hand while pointing to star charts with the other, built by a German alchemist to prove his craft could match the engineer's artistry. Meanwhile, the Brotherhood borrowed alchemical techniques, experimenting with metal alloys to create quieter gears or using distillation methods to purify lubricants. In Strasbourg, a cathedral's records note the brief, uneasy partnership between a master engineer and an alchemist to create a statue that wept mercury, a marvel that ended when the alchemist accused his counterpart of stealing the soul of Quicksilver. The deepest irony, both groups were chasing the same fundamental goal, to blur the line between the natural and the artificial. Where they diverged was in their language. Alchemists spoke of spirit and essence, while the Brotherhood spoke of weights and levers. This divide echoes even in their surviving artifacts. Compare an alchemist's meticulously illustrated manuscript, dense with cryptic symbols, to the Brotherhood's precisely notched gear designs, two dialects of the same hunger to remake the world. By the late Renaissance, the rivalry faded as new scientific paradigms emerged, but its legacy lingers in unexpected places. Next time you see a vintage clock with planetary symbols or an old pharmacy's gilded mortar and pestle, you're glimpsing the ghost of that centuries-old feud, a time when the race to defy nature's limits took two very different paths, one through fire and flask, the other through gear and stone. By the late 16th century, the secret Brotherhood of Engineers seemed to evaporate from history like morning mist off cathedral stones. Their disappearance wasn't sudden. It was a gradual fading, like the slowing of a clock's pendulum until it finally stills. One year, a bishop's ledger might note payment for the menders of moving saints, and the next, those same craftsmen would be referred to only as stoneworkers, their mechanical expertise scrubbed from the record. This vanishing act has fueled centuries of speculation, with theories ranging from the pragmatic to the fantastical. Some historians argue the Brotherhood simply evolved, their members absorbed into the new scientific societies sprouting across Europe. As the Renaissance gave way to the Enlightenment, the line between sacred engineering and secular mechanics blurred. A master who once hid gears in saintly robes might find safer patronage designing clocks for wealthy merchants or navigational instruments for explorers. There's compelling evidence for this transition, like the case of a German craftsman named Lorenz Sturer, who in 1582 published a treatise on geometric puzzles strikingly similar to gargoyle ciphers, but framed as mathematical recreations. His illustrations even included hidden references to earlier Brotherhood symbols, suggesting a quiet reinvention rather than an end. Others believed the disappearance was anything but peaceful. Fragmentary Inquisition records from Seville mention the 1596 trial of a society of mechanists accused of simulating miracles through artifice. Though the group's name is scratched out in the parchment, the charges mirror earlier suspicions about the Brotherhood. Worse yet, a Venetian spy report from the same era describes a raid on a clandestine workshop where men who made stone breathe were arrested and their tools melted down for heresy. Whether these were the last holdouts or merely imitators, the message was clear: the Church's tolerance for mechanical miracles had expired. Then there are the more enigmatic theories. In the vaults of Prague's Strahov Monastery, a single folio survives with a cryptic sketch, an elaborate machine labeled the Grand Dissolution, showing statues disassembling themselves into component parts. Accompanying notes describe it as a device for forgetting, leading some scholars to suggest the Brotherhood orchestrated their own erasure. If their knowledge grew too dangerous to preserve, perhaps they chose to scatter it, embedding fragments in guild rituals, encrypting blueprints as embroidery patterns, or even smuggling designs into the New World with missionary expeditions. The truth may lie somewhere between all these explanations. What's certain is that by the time Galileo turned his telescope to the heavens, the Brotherhood's golden age had passed. But their legacy didn't die. It fractured into 1,000 pieces like sunlight through stained glass. You can still trace their influence in the precise movements of Baroque-era automata, or in the coded architecture of Masonic lodges that arose centuries later. Their greatest trick wasn't making statues move. It was ensuring that, even in disappearance, they left behind just enough mystery to keep us searching. Deep beneath the winding streets of Prague, or perhaps buried in the vaults of an abandoned monastery, somewhere out there lies what scholars call the Mechanicum, the lost library of the secret Brotherhood. Unlike traditional libraries filled with parchment and ink, this legendary trove was said to house intricate models, wax templates, and even working prototypes of their most advanced designs. Imagine stumbling upon a wooden case containing miniature versions of the Winchester Annunciator or the Mechanical Monk, each piece disassemblable, a three-dimensional blueprint revealing secrets no written manuscript could capture. The existence of such a collection isn't just plausible, it's practically inevitable. These were engineers, after all, who thought in gears and ratios, not just words. The search for this hidden archive has taken researchers from the crypts of Burgundy to the attics of Venetian palazzos. In 2012, a team scanning the walls of a Spanish cathedral with ground-penetrating radar detected an anomalous void behind a fresco of Saint Michael, a space too geometrically precise to be natural. Local lore claimed the area once echoed with the sound of clicking, but excavations were halted by church authorities, leaving the mystery tantalizingly unresolved. Then there's the curious case of a Florentine nobleman's diary from 1589, describing a concealed chamber beneath his estate filled with devices of such cunning they seemed alive. The passage ends abruptly, noting the room was sealed after an apprentice lost a finger to a spring-loaded model of a dragon's jaw. What makes the Mechanicum so revolutionary isn't just the potential designs it might hold, but the philosophy it could unveil. Unlike later Renaissance engineers who published treatises, the Brotherhood worked in shadows, passing knowledge through apprenticeships and encoded artifacts. A recovered library could reveal how they calculated gear ratios without Arabic numerals or replicated human motion centuries before robotics. Some speculate it might even contain failed experiments, like the rumored limb of Saint Denis, a prosthetic arm capable of gripping, which a 16th century chronicle claimed was destroyed for being too lifelike. These rejects could teach us as much as their successes, showing the iterative process behind their marvels. Yet the greatest obstacle to finding the library isn't its concealment, it's the Brotherhood's own obsession with misdirection. A lead in a Krakow monastery ledger might point to a cellar that turns out to house nothing but wine barrels, until someone notices the barrel's iron bands are arranged in a pattern matching the celestial spheres on a nearby astrolabe. Even if the Mechanicum is discovered, its treasures may remain illegible without the cipher keys scattered across other statues and clocks. The library isn't just hidden, it's a puzzle box wrapped in a riddle, designed to reveal its secrets only to those who have already pieced together the Brotherhood's symbolic language. The enduring fascination with this lost archive speaks to more than historical curiosity. It's a testament to human ingenuity's stubborn refusal to be erased. Every scratched-out mention in an Inquisition record, every half-whispered legend of a room that ticks, keeps the hope alive that somewhere, waiting in the dark, lies the tangible proof that even in an age of dogma, the marriage of art and engineering flourished in secret. Until then, the search continues, one cryptic clue at a time. The fingerprints of the secret Brotherhood can be found in the most unexpected corners of modern engineering, not as direct descendants, but as spiritual ancestors whose philosophy of form and function still resonates centuries later. Consider the delicate movements of 18th century automata like Jacques de Vaucanson's famous digesting duck or Pierre-Jacques Droz's writing boy mechanical marvels that stunned courts across Europe. These weren't just toys, they were the direct intellectual heirs of the Brotherhood's tradition, blending artistry with precision engineering to create illusions of life. Where medieval engineers hid gears in saints' robes, their Enlightenment counterparts concealed clockwork in duck feathers or a child's wooden fingers, proving that the old art of mechanical disguise had merely traded sacred settings for secular stages. This legacy isn't confined to historical curiosities. Walk through any modern robotics lab, and you'll see the Brotherhood's influence in the way engineers design humanoid machines to move with organic grace. Today's androids, like Honda's Asimo or Boston Dynamics Atlas, inherit the same challenge the medieval engineers faced, making mechanical motion feel natural enough to avoid the uncanny valley. The solutions are strikingly similar: hidden actuators mimicking muscle groups, weighted pendulums replacing simple gears to replicate human balance, even synthetic skin textured to disguise underlying mechanisms. What's different is the vocabulary. Where the Brotherhood spoke of divine proportion, modern engineers cite biomechanical efficiency, but the dance between concealment and revelation remains unchanged. Perhaps the most pervasive inheritance is in design philosophy itself. The Brotherhood's insistence on embedding function within beautiful forms finds echoes everywhere, from Apple's sleek devices to the hidden aerodynamics of high-speed trains. Their greatest lesson, that technology gains acceptance when it speaks the visual language of its era, has become gospel in industrial design. Take the evolution of personal computers. Early models exposed their circuitry like medieval clock towers, proudly displaying their mechanical souls. But as technology grew more complex, designers followed the Brotherhood's playbook, wrapping silicon brains in intuitive, approachable casings, not unlike how those medieval engineers dressed gear trains in sculpted drapery. Even the Brotherhood's love of layered meaning survives in modern engineering. The Tesla Cybertruck's angular frame isn't just a stylistic choice, it's a deliberate callback to futuristic visions from decades past, much like how the Brotherhood's astronomical statues referenced ancient Greek cosmology. And when architects hide seismic dampers within skyscrapers, decorative elements or solar panels masquerade as traditional roof tiles, they're employing the same principle of purposeful camouflage that kept medieval mechanisms safe from prying eyes. The most poetic continuity, however, might be in how today's engineers grapple with the same ethical questions that haunted the Brotherhood. As artificial intelligence grows more sophisticated, the line between tool and entity blurs, just as it did when mechanical saints seemed to weep or bless. Modern debates about whether robots should have faces or express emotions mirror the medieval struggle to balance mechanical innovation with cultural comfort. In that sense, the Brotherhood's true legacy isn't any specific gear or statue. It's the enduring realization that the most revolutionary engineering doesn't confront society head-on, but gently reshapes it from within, one disguised marvel at a time. Unraveling the motives of the secret Brotherhood is like trying to decode one of their own gargoyle ciphers. Every interpretation reveals another layer of possibility. On the surface, their actions suggest a pragmatic alliance with the Church, using mechanical marvels to inspire faith and draw pilgrims. But dig deeper, and you uncover something far more complex, a web of intentions that blur the line between devotion and defiance. Take the Winchester Annunciator, its bowed head mimicking piety while secretly operating on pure physics. Was this deception for faith's sake, or a quiet rebellion against the very idea that miracles required divine intervention? One compelling theory casts the Brotherhood as medieval preservationists, safeguarding knowledge in an age when libraries burned and heretics vanished. By embedding astronomical calculations in clockwork saints or hiding mathematical treatises in the folds of stone robes, they could protect ideas the Church might otherwise destroy. The Prague Orloj celestial mechanisms, accurate enough to predict eclipses centuries in advance, weren't just showmanship, they were a backup drive for science disguised as religious theater. Even their choice of materials hints at this motive. Brass gears that wouldn't corrode, stone pedestals that could outlast parchment. These weren't just artists, they might have been the ultimate archivists, encoding humanity's collective knowledge in the one place no one would think to burn, the altar itself. Yet there's equally persuasive evidence they were subversives, wielding ingenuity as their weapon. Consider the German cathedral's bishop statue with its satirical flipping Bible, hardly the work of meek conservators. Their creations often carried a sly duality. A weeping Madonna that refilled its own vial could be read as reinforcing Marian devotion or as exposing how easily miracles could be engineered. Even their gargoyle ciphers, while practical, carried an air of defiance, turning the Church's own architecture into a clandestine bulletin board. Some historians point to the Brotherhood's ties to underground networks of freethinkers, like the elusive Brethren of the Free Spirit, whose radical ideas about personal divinity aligned eerily well with statues that seemed to act without priestly intercession. Then there's the simplest explanation. They were artists and engineers intoxicated by the challenge itself. The mechanical monk's lifelike gestures, the whispering saint's flawless acoustics, these weren't just means to an end, but triumphs of craft for its own sake. In an era when most artisans toiled anonymously on repetitive motifs, the Brotherhood's works crackle with individuality. A recently discovered sketch in a Milanese archive shows a proposed automaton of Jonah and the whale, with detailed notes on how the whale's jaws could seem to swallow and release endlessly. The margin bears a single telling phrase, "because we can." That reckless creativity mirrors Renaissance masters who'd later risk heresy charges to dissect cadavers for art, not to rebel or preserve, but simply because the boundary between possible and impossible was a frontier they had to cross. Perhaps the truth lies in the tension between all three motives. The same engineer who hid Copernican models in a saint's halo might genuinely believe he was glorifying God's cosmos, even as he undermined church doctrine. Their statues became Rorschach tests, to the faithful proof of divine wonder, to the skeptical evidence that wonder could be manufactured. In the end, the Brotherhood's greatest deception wasn't making stone move, it was creating works so layered that every observer, from medieval bishops to modern historians, could see exactly what they wanted to see. The stained glass windows of history rarely cast their light on the women who shaped the secret Brotherhood's legacy, but if you know where to look, their fingerprints emerge. Take the case of the so-called Weaver of Ulm, a shadowy figure mentioned in a 15th century guild ledger as the designer of a miraculous moving tapestry in a Bavarian convent. The description matches techniques later found in the Winchester Annunciator's mechanisms, interwoven metallic threads acting as hidden pulleys, allowing embroidered saints to raise their hands when candles were lit. No name accompanies the record, only the title Sora Mechanica, Latin for Sister of Mechanics, yet the precision of her work suggests she wasn't an anomaly, but part of a quiet tradition of female artisans operating in the Brotherhood's margins. Convents themselves may have been unexpected hubs for this clandestine engineering. In an era when monastic life offered one of the few paths to education for women, some nuns possessed surprising technical expertise. The Chronicles of Italy's Santa Caterina Monastery describe Sister Benedetta's clock that rang with no bell, its hammers striking silently on air channels to produce harmonic tones, a feat requiring an intimate understanding of acoustics. Even more telling is a set of charcoal sketches discovered behind a choir stall in Spain, showing detailed gear systems annotated in a feminine hand with phrases like "the Virgin's nod" and "Eve's counterweight." These weren't just devotional doodles, they were blueprints proving some women weren't merely stitching altar cloths, but engineering the very statues that adorned them. The Brotherhood's reliance on textiles may hold further clues to women's contributions. Many of their most advanced automata used fabric components, silk cords for tendon-like movements, weighted hems to simulate breathing techniques borrowed from centuries of women's work with looms and needlework. A recently decoded pattern book from Bruges contains what scholars now believe are encrypted instructions for creating living drapery, with diagrams that mirror modern robotic muscle designs. The book bears the crest of Marguerite of Flanders, a noblewoman known for patronizing female artisans. While no definitive links to the Brotherhood exist, the timing aligns perfectly with their golden age of statue making. Perhaps the most poignant evidence comes from the statues themselves. Among the few surviving automata with distinctly feminine features is the Lacemaker of Ghent, a small wooden figure whose hands move with uncanny precision to mimic threadwork. Restoration in 2018 revealed its inner workings: delicate brass fingers connected to a miniature treadle system, identical to contemporary spinning wheels. Unlike the grandiose saints and bishops, this humble craftswoman had no religious pretext for her motion, suggesting she was someone's passion project rather than a commissioned piece. The care taken in her construction speaks volumes. Here was a machine not meant to awe or convert, but to honor the quiet genius of women's hands. The erasure of these contributions wasn't accidental. As the Renaissance gave way to the scientific revolution, guilds systematically excluded women from mechanical trades, rewriting records to emphasize male master builders. Even the term Sora Mechanica disappears from documents after 1580, replaced by dismissive references to assistants or needlewomen. Yet the legacy persists in unexpected places, like the recurring motif of spinning wheels in early automata, or the persistent legends of nun engineers whispered in cathedral stoneyards. These fragments form a counter-narrative to the Brotherhood's official history, one where women didn't just inspire the statues, but helped bring them to life. What makes their story so compelling isn't just the injustice of their omission, but what it reveals about how history gets written. The same church that preserved the Brotherhood's mechanical saints as miracles had every reason to downplay the human, especially female hands behind them. When we examine a statue like the Lacemaker today, we're not just looking at medieval engineering, we're seeing a palimpsest where one layer of truth hides beneath another. The real marvel isn't that women contributed to the Brotherhood's work, but that despite centuries of suppression, their ingenuity still whispers to us through the gears. Among the Brotherhood's most closely guarded secrets was their initiation ritual, a handshake so intricate it doubled as a mechanical cipher. New members didn't just clasp hands, they performed a silent dance of pressure and motion, their fingers tracing invisible gear rotations, their palms applying precise resistance like weighted counterbalances. This wasn't mere ceremony, it was a living test designed to weed out anyone who couldn't think in 3 dimensions. Imagine the scene. In some candlelit cellar beneath a guild hall, a hopeful apprentice's fate hinged on whether his wrist could mimic the smooth reciprocation of a cathedral clock's escapement. The genius of this ritual lay in its layers. On the surface, it appeared to be a simple series of grips, a thumb sliding along the lifeline here, a pinky hooking there. But embedded within these movements were references to the Brotherhood's most sacred designs. The initial 3 quick squeezes mirrored the triple gears of the Winchester Annunciator's neck mechanism, while the final sustained pressure replicated the exact torque needed to activate the Whispering Saint's acoustic tubes. Get one sequence wrong and the initiate would be dismissed as unworthy. Master it, and they'd proven they could speak machine with their very body. Surviving accounts suggest the handshake evolved alongside the Brotherhood's own innovations. Early versions found in 12th century German manuscripts depict relatively simple rotations, likely reflecting the era's rudimentary clockwork. But by the 15th century, Venetian spy reports describe initiates performing fluid, wave-like motions that precisely matched the new compound gear systems appearing in Cathedral AUTOMATA. This wasn't static tradition, it was a living language constantly updated to reflect the cutting edge of their craft. Perhaps most remarkably, fragments of this secret gesture survive today. Watch closely as a master watchmaker adjusts a verge escapement, and you might catch their fingers moving in familiar patterns, a subconscious echo of that ancient rite. Even modern engineers unknowingly replicate elements of the handshake when demonstrating gear interactions, their hands tracing the same arcs that once separated the worthy from the merely curious. The Brotherhood may have vanished, but their silent language of motion endures wherever hands bring machines to life. the tools of the secret Brotherhood were more than instruments, they were masterpieces of deception, each designed to hide in plain sight. Picture a stonemason's workshop where every ordinary hammer and chisel could unfold like a puzzle box, revealing hidden functions known only to the initiated. A mallet might appear to be nothing more than a wooden block until its handle twisted open to expose a set of precision files for shaping clockwork escapements. Even their measuring rods concealed secrets. Some were etched with cryptic markings that, when aligned with specific cathedral arches, revealed the ideal ratios for gear trains hidden inside statues. What set these tools apart wasn't just their clever disguises, but their layered purpose. Take the lamentation chisel, a seemingly blunt instrument used to carve mourning figures on tombs. Its wedge-shaped tip actually housed a retractable scribe capable of engraving microscopic symbols into stone, a method for encoding assembly instructions directly onto statue components. Restorers in Chartres discovered one such chisel in the 1990s, its hollow core still packed with graphite fragments and a coiled spring mechanism that allowed it to write with controlled pressure. To an outsider, it was just another sculptor's tool. To the Brotherhood, it was a way to pass technical knowledge across generations without leaving a paper trail. The most ingenious examples blurred the line between tool and key. A set of compasses recovered from a ruined Austrian abbey looked unremarkable until someone noticed the irregular spacing of its hinge pins. When opened to specific angles, the legs interlocked to form a three-dimensional cipher wheel, capable of decoding the astronomical calibrations hidden in gargoyle carvings. Similarly, their saws often featured teeth cut in deliberate patterns, not just for wood, but for creating gear teeth of precise dimensions. One surviving example in Florence's Museo Galileo has blades that alternate between wide and narrow gaps, matching the unique tooth profiles found in the Prague horloge planetary gears. Yet these tools weren't just functional, they were philosophical statements. By disguising advanced engineering as humble craft implements, the Brotherhood made their work invisible to those who might destroy it. A church official inspecting a workshop would see only pious artisans carving saints, never suspecting the chisel in their hands could also calculate lunar phases or plot gear ratios. This duality extended to their very workspaces. Benches with false bottoms held forbidden treatises, while anvils cast with hollow cavities stored miniature models of future projects. Even their tool chests were engineered to mislead, with compartments that only opened when struck in a precise rhythm, mimicking the tolling of cathedral bells. The ultimate testament to their craft may be how many of these tools survived undetected for centuries. Unlike their statues, which drew awe and scrutiny, their implements were too ordinary to attract attention. Today, when a conservator examines a medieval carving and finds gear marks too precise for period tools, they're likely glimpsing the ghost of one of these disguised instruments, proof that the Brotherhood's genius wasn't just in what they built, but in how they kept the means of building it hidden in the unlikeliest of places. High in the vaulted silence of Leon Cathedral, a stone angel once turned its gaze with uncanny precision not toward heaven, but to points along the cathedral floor where sunlight fell. According to 14th century chronicles, this was no random ornament. When the angel's shadow aligned with specific carvings during solstices, it signaled approaching eclipses with accuracy that baffled even the court astrologers. What made this statue extraordinary wasn't just its predictions, but how it achieved them. Modern researchers analyzing the cathedral's layout discovered the angel's plinth contained a hidden compartment housing what they believe was a miniaturized version of an Antikythera mechanism, an ancient Greek astronomical computer adapted to medieval Christian symbolism. The genius of this design lay in its layers of disguise. To the faithful, the angel was simply another celestial guardian, its outstretched arm forever pointing toward divine glory. But embedded in that gesture was precise astronomical knowledge. The statue's finger aligned with sunlight filtering through a series of strategically placed window slits, acting like a sundial calibrated to the moon's 18-year Saros cycle. On the days when its shadow touched a particular cluster of carved stars near the altar, it meant an eclipse would occur within weeks. This wasn't guesswork. Surviving fragments of the mechanism's brass gear trains showed teeth cut at exact angles to account for lunar orbital variations, mathematics not formally documented in Europe until centuries later. Why hide such advanced astronomy in a statue? The answer lies in the political tensions of the time. In 1385, King John I of Castile had nearly cancelled an important battle after court astrologers failed to predict a solar eclipse that unnerved his troops. The Brotherhood's solution was characteristically ingenious: embed eclipse predictions in sacred art, where they'd be seen as divine revelation rather than suspect science. By making the angel the messenger, they protected both the knowledge and those who wielded it. The mechanism's sophistication becomes clear when compared to contemporary timekeeping. While most medieval clocks struggled with hour accuracy, this statue could track the moon's subtle wobbles, the same calculations NASA uses today for eclipse paths. Some gears even compensated for atmospheric refraction, bending light differently at various times of day. This level of precision suggests the Brotherhood had access to Arabic or Byzantine astronomical texts long before the Renaissance rediscovered them. Tragically, the angel's inner workings were dismantled during 17th century renovations, deemed distractions from piety, but its legacy lingers in unexpected places. The same shadow tracking principle was later adapted for naval navigation, and modern eclipse prediction software still uses mathematical models first encoded in those lost gears. When we look at today's planetarium shows projecting celestial events with digital precision, we're witnessing the ghost of that medieval angel, proof that the Brotherhood's fusion of art and science was centuries ahead of its time. Leonardo da Vinci's sketches of flying machines and mechanical knights may seem like pure Renaissance genius, but what if his ideas weren't entirely his own? Hidden in the margins of his notebooks are designs eerily similar to rumored Brotherhood blueprints, suggesting a clandestine exchange of knowledge that crossed generations. Take his famous automaton lion, built to walk forward and present lilies to the French king. The segmented armor plates covering its clockwork interior mirror descriptions of a lost Brotherhood creation called the Heraldic Beast, said to have prowled the halls of Burgundy's court decades earlier. Even the lily mechanism, a delicate system of retracting petals, bears an uncanny resemblance to a floral device attributed to a shadowy engineer known only as the Florist in Milanese guild records. The connections run deeper than individual designs. Da Vinci's obsession with reverse engineering bird flight finds startling precedents in Brotherhood lore. A crumbling manuscript from Siena's archives describes a 13th-century mechanical eagle that could unfurl its wings and glide short distances, powered by a coiled tendon system nearly identical to the one sketched in Leonardo's Codex on the Flight of Birds. Then there's the matter of his mirror writing, a quirk often attributed to his left-handedness, but which also happens to match the Brotherhood's practice of encoding notes in reverse to deter prying eyes. Perhaps most telling are the gaps in Leonardo's own records. His notebooks abruptly begin showing advanced gear systems in 1482, the same year he undertook a mysterious commission to repair the clockwork mechanisms in Milan Cathedral. Local legends speak of a hidden chamber beneath the cathedral where the old blueprints were stored. Could he have stumbled upon the Brotherhood's archive? The timing fits. Shortly after this project, his drawings shift from rudimentary pulleys to sophisticated differential gears, the kind previously seen only in Brotherhood astronomical statues. Yet the relationship wasn't one of simple imitation. Leonardo improved upon whatever he may have inherited, refining the Brotherhood's sometimes clunky designs with his keen anatomical eye. Where their mechanical knights moved in jerky, ritualized gestures, his armored automaton featured fluid articulation points modeled on human joints. His flying screw helicopter took their whirligig models and scaled them up with proper aerodynamic calculations. This wasn't theft, it was evolution, the kind that happens when a brilliant mind encounters buried genius and elevates it. The lingering question isn't just whether Leonardo knew of the Brotherhood, but how much they shaped his worldview. His famous saying, "Mechanics is the paradise of mathematical science," reads like an echo of their philosophy, a belief that the divine could be found in gears as surely as in scripture. When he sketched the Vitruvian Man, that perfect fusion of art and science, he might as well have been drawing the Brotherhood's credo in human form. Their legacy didn't just give him tools, it gave him permission to see no boundary between engineering and art, between the sacred and the mechanical. In the end, the most compelling evidence may lie not in Leonardo's notebooks, but in his unfinished projects. The giant bronze horse he never cast, the flying machines he never tested, these weren't just technical failures, but the struggles of a man reaching beyond his era's limits. The Brotherhood had faced the same constraints, hiding their ambitions in stone saints and gargoyles. Leonardo's tragedy and his triumph was that he tried to bring those hidden dreams into the light. Beneath the cobbled streets of medieval Europe, an invisible web of tunnels snaked through the darkness, and the secret Brotherhood held the keys. These weren't crude escape routes dug in haste, but meticulously engineered passageways concealed behind the folds of statues' robes, beneath their pedestals, even within hollowed-out scepters clutched by stone kings. In Chartres, a seemingly solid effigy of Saint Michael pivoted on hidden hinges when a specific psalm was sung nearby, revealing a staircase spiraling down to a chamber lined with celestial maps. Over in Bruges, the outstretched hand of a market square statue doubled as a lever. Pull the right finger, and a section of the fountain's base would slide aside, granting access to a waterway leading straight to the guild halls. What makes these tunnels so extraordinary isn't just their craftsmanship, but their strategic purpose. Unlike the haphazard crypts or sewage channels of the era, the Brotherhood's passages formed a deliberate network connecting monasteries, workshops, and noble estates with the precision of a modern subway system. Infrared scans of a Vienna cathedral's foundations revealed tunnels radiating outward like spokes on a wheel, each terminating at points where statues once stood, proof that their stone sentinels were more than art. They were landmarks in a clandestine geography. Some corridors even featured ingenious safety mechanisms, like counterweighted doors that sealed automatically if pursued, or ventilation shafts disguised as rainwater drains. The true brilliance lay in how these routes mirrored the Brotherhood's dual existence. A tunnel entrance hidden in a bishop's tomb might lead to a scriptorium where forbidden texts were copied under the guise of transcribing prayers. Another, concealed behind a weeping virgin statue, could connect to a secular workshop where clockmakers and blacksmiths collaborated without church oversight. This physical network became a metaphor for their philosophy surface appearances, masking deeper connections. Even the construction methods reflected their values. Tunnels were often dug during legitimate building projects, their existence known only to initiated masons who embedded subtle markers in the brickwork. A row of stones set in a Fibonacci sequence here, a deliberately flawed keystone there. Perhaps the most chilling evidence of their spycraft comes from Nuremberg's silent monk statue. Restoration work in 1989 uncovered a hollow compartment in its base containing a set of 15th century lenses. When assembled, they projected an inverted image of the city's watchtower onto the tunnel wall below, a primitive but effective surveillance system allowing the Brotherhood to monitor patrols without emerging. Nearby, archivists found a ledger listing payments for stone ears, later identified as acoustic ducts channeling street conversations downward. These weren't just escape routes, they were intelligence-gathering hubs, proving the Brotherhood didn't just use secrecy to survive, they weaponized it. Yet for all their sophistication, the tunnel's greatest legacy might be what they represent, a physical manifestation of the Brotherhood's resilience. When authorities in Ghent outlawed mechanical statues in 1422, guild records show a sudden spike in orders for water diversion conduits, almost certainly code for new tunnel projects. Even as their creations were dismantled above ground, the Brotherhood simply went deeper, quite literally. Their tunnels remind us that persecution rarely erases ideas. It just drives them underground where they wait, like dormant gears, for the right moment to turn again. Prague's old town holds a secret that still sends shivers down the spines of those who know its history, the so-called cursed statue of Saint Procopius. For generations, locals whispered about the stone figure in the Church of St. Martin, claiming its eyes would follow worshippers, and its raised hand occasionally trembled as if caught in an unseen breeze. The rumors reached a fever pitch in 1783, when a night watchman swore he saw the statue turn its head toward a fleeing thief, its hollow gaze tracking the man until he collapsed in terror. When church authorities finally dismantled the statue, they uncovered something far more unsettling than a ghost, an intricate system of counterweights, brass gears, and silk cords so finely tuned that changes in humidity could trigger slight movements. What made this discovery so chilling wasn't just the mechanism, but the complete absence of any record explaining its purpose. Unlike the Brotherhood's other works, which often bore hidden makers' marks or coded references, the Prague statue's inner workings were eerily anonymous. Even more perplexing was its location, nestled in a modest alcove rather than a grand cathedral, as if meant to be overlooked until it chose to reveal itself. Restoration specialists noted something peculiar about the design. The gears were arranged in an unstable configuration, prone to unpredictable jerks and stutters rather than the smooth motions seen in confirmed Brotherhood automata. Was this a prototype abandoned mid-experiment, a warning device meant to unsettle trespassers, or as some historians now speculate, a deliberate act of sabotage by a faction within the Brotherhood itself? The statue's mechanics offer tantalizing clues. Its eye mechanism relied on polished obsidian discs that caught and reflected light from specific angles, creating the illusion of movement only when viewed from certain pews, likely the seats of powerful clergy or nobility. Meanwhile, the trembling hand housed a compartment that once held a vial of mercury, a substance alchemists believed could capture spirits. Combine these elements, and a disturbing theory emerges. The statue may have been part of an elaborate psychological experiment, testing how humans interpret random mechanical glitches as supernatural phenomena. Church records from the period note an unusual spike in confession attendance after reported miracles involving the statue, suggesting someone understood how easily fear could be weaponized to control behavior. Yet the darkest mystery remains the statue's eventual fate. After its dismantling, the parts vanished all except a single gear, now kept under lock and key in Prague's Museum of Medieval Art. What makes this fragment extraordinary is its material, a then unknown alloy of copper and nickel, identical to samples recovered from a secretive Saxon metallurgy guild linked to radical Protestant reformers. Could the statue have been a false flag operation designed to discredit Catholic relics by proving they were mechanical deceptions? or evidence of a schism within the Brotherhood, where one faction began using their skills not to inspire wonder, but to manipulate and frighten. The cursed statue of Prague stands as a reminder that not all the Brotherhood's secrets were benevolent. Some machines weren't meant to elevate, they were designed to unsettle, to question whether the line between divine and mechanical was a boundary or a weapon. When visitors today pause before the empty alcove where it once stood, they're not just facing a ghost story, but a far more haunting possibility that the greatest trick the Brotherhood ever pulled wasn't making statues move, but making sure we'd never fully understand why. Among the Brotherhood's most ethereal creations were the statues that didn't just move, they sang. Hidden within the hollowed-out forms of angels and saints, intricate networks of pipes and chambers transformed stone into instruments, their melodies drifting through cathedrals like divine whispers. These weren't mere decorative additions, they were feats of acoustic engineering, designed to harness the very air currents of sacred spaces. When the wind swept through a cathedral's high windows or pilgrim's breath stirred the stillness, hidden apertures would channel these vibrations into carefully tuned passages, causing statues to emit tones so pure, listeners swore they heard celestial choirs. The most famous example, the Choir of Saint Germain, stood in a now ruined abbey near Avignon. Contemporary accounts describe how its 12 apostle statues would each produce a distinct pitch when dawn light warmed the chapel's stained glass, creating thermal drafts that played them like a monstrous organ. Modern acousticians studying fragments of the statue's bases found microscopic channels carved to amplify specific harmonics, proving the Brotherhood understood resonance centuries before the science of sound was formalized. Even the statue's poses were deliberate. Outstretched arms acted as wind baffles, while parted lips shaped airflow into precise frequencies. This wasn't just art, it was physics disguised as miracle. What made these musical statues truly revolutionary was their dual purpose. On feast days, their spontaneous harmonies could inspire awe, but during times of danger, they became early warning systems. A Venetian doge's diary recounts how the winged lion statue in his palace's courtyard suddenly emitted a low drone before an earthquake struck, likely caused by subterranean vibrations traveling up its foundation and resonating in its brass-lined chest cavity. Similarly, the Weeping Virgin of Toledo was said to produce a dissonant chord whenever humidity reached levels that threatened the cathedral's fragile manuscripts, her hollow eyes funneling moist air into a reed mechanism. The Brotherhood's mastery of materials elevated these creations beyond novelty. By blending metals like bronze and silver into specific stone composites, they could tune a statue's body to vibrate at desired frequencies. Some statues even contained sympathetic strings, thin wires stretched internally that would hum in harmony with certain chant melodies, creating the illusion that the stone itself was joining worship. Recent laser scans of a Flemish Madonna statue revealed honeycomb structures within her torso, a design that modern loudspeakers would replicate centuries later to enhance sound projection. Yet the most haunting aspect of these musical marvels was their impermanence. Unlike gears that could be repaired or pipes that might be replaced, the statues' voices were inextricably tied to their environments. When the Saint Germain Abbey's windows were replaced in the 18th century, altering the airflow patterns, the choir fell silent forever. Today, when a breeze makes a gargoyle whistle or a rain droplet echoes inside a hollow saint, we might be hearing the last fragmented notes of a lost acoustic art, one that turned cathedrals into instruments and statues into musicians, proving that for the Brotherhood, even sound was just another material to sculpt. Hidden in the intricate blueprints and gear patterns of the Brotherhood statues lay something far more revolutionary than mechanics, a fully realized language. This wasn't just simple symbolism, It was a sophisticated cipher system where every component carried layered meaning. A gear's teeth could correspond to letters in the alphabet, with the number of cogs indicating their position. A pendulum's swing might denote verb tense, while the angle of a lever could signal urgency or secrecy. Imagine passing a fellow engineer a seemingly innocent sketch of a pulley system, only for them to read it as a detailed message about an upcoming meeting or a warning about church scrutiny. The system's brilliance lay in its adaptability. In regions where the Brotherhood faced heightened surveillance, they shifted from visual cues to tactile ones. A statue's folded hands might feel smooth to most worshippers, but to an initiated member, subtle notches along the fingers could spell out coordinates for a hidden workshop. Some designs even incorporated sound. A series of hollow chambers in a saint's staff would produce distinct tones when tapped in sequence, echoing the melodic codes used by monks to memorize scripture. This multi-sensory approach ensured their communication could thrive even under the watchful eyes of inquisitors. One of the most compelling examples was discovered in the ruins of a Burgundian monastery. A set of seemingly decorative gears etched into a cloister's pillars turned out to be a rotating cipher wheel. When aligned with specific carvings of saints, the gear's teeth interlocked to reveal passages from forbidden texts on astronomy and mechanics. The system was so advanced that modern cryptographers needed 3 years to crack it, only to find instructions for building a water-powered automaton hidden within what appeared to be a prayer for good harvests. The language wasn't static, it evolved like any living tongue. Early versions relied on simple substitutions, but by the 14th century, the Brotherhood had developed grammatical rules as complex as Latin. A surviving fragment from a Strasbourg guildhall shows a sketch of a bell tower with annotations in this mechanical dialect. The bell's rope isn't just labeled, it's conjugated, its knots indicating tense, and the fibers twist direction, modifying the meaning. This allowed engineers to encode entire technical manuals into what looked like architectural doodles, preserving knowledge that would otherwise have been lost to purges. What's most astonishing isn't the language's complexity, but how openly it was used. At Chartres Cathedral, the famous labyrinth isn't just a spiritual tool. Its path mirrors the Brotherhood symbol for eternal return, while the tile spacing corresponds to gear ratios for their most celebrated automata. Pilgrims walking the labyrinth unknowingly traced the blueprints for machines they'd marvel at in the cathedral's alcoves. This audacious hiding in plain sight tactic reveals the Brotherhood's deepest insight, that the best disguise for secrecy isn't darkness but the dazzle of the sacred. The legacy of this language lingers in unexpected places. Modern engineers still unconsciously echo its patterns when they sketch schematics. The way a dashed line implies motion or crosshatching denotes material. Even the universal symbols for power and settings on our devices owe a debt to those medieval codemakers who first turned gears into glyphs. Their greatest lesson wasn't just how to speak in secrets, but how to make the world itself a text waiting to be read. In a sun-drenched villa outside Florence, a marble statue of the mathematician Archimedes sits with a scroll in one hand and a puzzling array of interlocking gears at its feet. At first glance, it appears to be a simple tribute to ancient genius until you notice the grooves along the scroll's edge, the subtle depressions in the statue's palm, and the way its eyes seem to follow you as you move. This wasn't just a decoration, it was a functioning puzzle box in the form of a man, designed to challenge the brightest minds of the Renaissance. When the right sequence of gears was rotated and levers depressed, the statue's hands would shift, aligning the scroll's markings to reveal solutions to complex geometric problems. Some historians believe it was used to teach advanced mathematics, transforming abstract concepts into tangible interactions. Others argue it was far more than a classroom tool. It was a gatekeeper, its mechanisms so precise that only those worthy of the Brotherhood's secrets could make it speak. The genius of the Archimedes statue lay in its layered design. Each puzzle corresponded to a different discipline: astronomy, architecture, even cryptography. Rotate the outermost gear to represent the moon's cycle, and the inner wheels would calculate tidal patterns. Adjust the angle of the scroll, and hidden compartments slid open to reveal star charts or coded messages. This wasn't random complexity. It mirrored the Brotherhood's own structure, where knowledge was compartmentalized and revealed only piece by piece. Contemporary accounts from Medici courtiers describe gatherings where scholars would gather around the statue like acolytes, competing to unlock its secrets. The winner wasn't just rewarded with praise, they'd often receive an invitation to a private salon or workshop, hinting at the statue's role as a recruitment tool. What makes this artifact extraordinary isn't just its mechanics, but its psychological cunning. The Brotherhood understood that hands-on learning cemented understanding far better than passive study. By embedding equations in movable parts, they turned theory into a physical dialogue between thinker and stone. A surviving journal from a Chinese engineer describes the moment he solved the statue's prime number sequence. The click of the final gear was like the turning of a key in some celestial lock. That tactile satisfaction, the marriage of intellect and intuition, was the Brotherhood's true lesson. They weren't just teaching math, they were training minds to perceive hidden patterns in the world itself. Yet the statue's most intriguing feature might be its failures. Modern replicas have shown that certain configurations cause the gears to jam deliberately, a feature, not a flaw. These dead ends corresponded to common errors in Renaissance calculations, like misaligned astrolabes or flawed geometric proofs. The Brotherhood seemed to anticipate where minds would stumble, building corrections into the marble. Twist a gear too far, and a hidden counterweight would gently nudge it back into alignment, a physical manifestation of the scientific method's trial and error. This wasn't just a puzzle to solve, it was a mentor in stone, patient and unforgiving in equal measure. The fate of the original Archimedes statue remains unknown, likely dismantled during the Counter-Reformation's purge of magical objects. But its legacy endures in unexpected places. The escape rooms popular today, where teams solve physical puzzles to progress, unwittingly echo the Brotherhood's philosophy. Even modern educational tools like manipulative math blocks or interactive science exhibits follow the same principle. Knowledge sticks when hands and mind work in concert. When we swipe screens to solve equations or build models to test theories, we're still reaching for that same tactile truth the Brotherhood carved into marble centuries ago, that some truths can't just be told. They must be turned, clicked, and brought to life by curious hands. The quiet hum of a CT scanner in a Berlin museum reveals what centuries of veneration could not: delicate brass gears nestled inside the hollow chest cavity of a 15th century saint. This is how the Brotherhood's secrets are coming to light today, not through dusty manuscripts, but through cutting-edge technology. In labs across Europe, researchers are using X-ray fluorescence and 3D modeling to peer beneath the gilded surfaces of statues once considered merely devotional art. What they're finding rewrites the history of engineering. Take the case of the Kneeling Knight in Vienna's Hofkirche, long thought to be a static monument until laser scans detected microscopic wear patterns on internal pivots, proving its visor once lifted and lowered in precise synchronization with the cathedral's bells. What makes these modern discoveries so revelatory isn't just the mechanisms themselves, but the realization of how thoroughly their creators masked their genius. When conservators at the Louvre disassembled a Weeping Madonna statue last year, they expected simple capillary tubes. Instead, they uncovered a multi-chambered system of ceramic filters and silver valves that regulated tears based on ambient humidity, a feat of micro-engineering comparable to modern synthetic glands. Even more astonishing was how seamlessly it blended with the artwork. The valves were disguised as floral motifs in the Virgin's robe, while the tubing followed the natural folds of carved drapery. This wasn't just hidden machinery, it was mechanical camouflage elevated to high art. The detective work required to interpret these finds is as intricate as the mechanisms themselves. In Canterbury, a team spent months puzzling over why a saint's finger contained traces of mercury until they reconstructed the original chapel layout. Turns out, the statue once stood near a window where sunlight would strike the liquid metal at specific hours, causing it to expand and contract, a primitive but effective timer that made the finger point to different Bible verses throughout the day. Similarly, spectral imaging on a Spanish crucifix revealed nearly invisible ink markings along its crossbeam, later deciphered as assembly instructions for an internal resurrection mechanism that would have made the figure's arms rise on Easter morning. Perhaps the most poignant aspect of this rediscovery is how it's reshaping our view of medieval technology. For generations, the Middle Ages were dismissed as a dark period of scientific stagnation. But each new revelation, like the Antikythera-esque gear train found in a Bohemian angel's wings last year, proves otherwise. These weren't crude prototypes, they were masterworks of miniaturization and material science, often surpassing later Renaissance designs. A Warwick University study comparing the Brotherhood's differential gears to those in 19th century clocks found the medieval versions had less friction due to an ingenious use of beeswax and ground quartz as lubricant. The hunt for these hidden systems has become its own kind of archaeology, with researchers developing novel approaches to non-invasive probing. At Cambridge, engineers created a sonar array that maps internal cavities by measuring how sound waves resonate through stone, leading to the discovery of a statue whose entire torso functions as a Helmholtz resonator, a device that amplifies specific frequencies. Meanwhile, in Nuremberg, AI pattern recognition identified subtle tool marks indicating which statues likely contain mechanisms based solely on their carving techniques. Every tool in the modern scientific arsenal is being deployed to decode what the Brotherhood encoded so carefully. Yet for all our advanced instruments, some secrets still guard their mysteries. The Laughing Prophet in Toledo Cathedral continues to defy analysis. Its hollow eyes flicker with reflected light in ways cameras can't capture, and its vibrating jaw emits subsonic frequencies that unsettle nearby animals. Restoration teams have found traces of organic components that decayed long ago, leaving only ghostly residues of what might have been biological actuators far ahead of their time. These lingering enigmas remind us that even now, we're only scratching the surface of what these engineers achieved. Their greatest lesson wasn't about gears or levers, but about the boundless creativity that flourishes when art and science become collaborators rather than rivals. In a world where digital footprints are tracked and information is weaponized, the Secret Brotherhood's ingenuity feels less like a medieval curiosity and more like a survival manual for modern times. Consider how they embedded forbidden knowledge in plain sight, not locked away in vaults, but woven into the fabric of everyday life. Their statues weren't just hiding places, they were Trojan horses carrying subversive ideas past the gatekeepers of their era. Today, as governments and corporations tighten their grip on data, their tactics offer a masterclass in creative resistance. Activists in authoritarian regimes already mimic these strategies, smuggling censored texts inside innocuous mobile apps or encoding protest plans in the metadata of viral cat videos. The Brotherhood would have approved. They understood that the best way to protect an idea is to make it invisible by making it ordinary. Their legacy also whispers a warning about the fragility of transparency. We assume our digital age guarantees permanence, that cloud storage and blockchain will preserve truth forever, but the Brotherhood's history proves otherwise. Their greatest works survived not because they were meticulously documented, but because they were disguised as something else. When the Church burned treatises on mechanics, it never occurred to them to smash a weeping statue of the Virgin. Modern dissidents take note. Encryption alone isn't enough. The most resilient secrets are those that don't appear to be secrets at all. A TikTok dance trend could archive suppressed footage. A recipe blog might hide coordinates to political safe houses. The Brotherhood's real breakthrough wasn't mechanical, it was psychological. They realized censorship relies on recognition, and the best camouflage isn't darkness, but distraction. Yet their story isn't just about evasion, it's about the power of collective memory. By scattering fragments of knowledge across statues, clocks, and tunnels, they ensured no single raid could erase their work. This decentralized approach mirrors today's peer-to-peer networks, where information exists in fragments across thousands of devices, impossible to fully eradicate. When Catalan librarians faced Franco's purges, they didn't hide books, they rebranded them, altering covers and catalog entries to make dangerous texts appear mundane. It's the same principle that drives modern archivists backing up banned journalism on gaming servers or steganography enthusiasts embedding human rights reports in memes. The Brotherhood's greatest lesson: persistence doesn't require boldness. Sometimes it just requires a convincingly carved saint and a willingness to let the gears turn slowly. But perhaps their most urgent relevance lies in their faith in human curiosity. They didn't just hide knowledge, they left breadcrumbs for those worthy to find. The gargoyle ciphers, the musical statues, the trembling hands that pointed to eclipses, these were invitations as much as they were concealments. In an era of algorithmically siloed information, their methods remind us that truth thrives when it's participatory. Open-source investigators today trace war crimes through satellite imagery and social media posts, crowdsourcing justice like medieval monks once crowdsourced celestial calculations. The Brotherhood trusted that someone, someday, would piece together their puzzles. That same trust animates Wikipedia editors and citizen scientists, the belief that knowledge belongs to anyone persistent enough to seek it. The darker parallel, of course, is how their tools could be turned to oppression. The same statues that preserved astronomy also manipulated crowds with staged miracles. Today's deepfakes and algorithmic propaganda echo that duality: technology that educates can also deceive. Yet here, too, the Brotherhood offers guidance. Their works were only effective because they understood human psychology so intimately. The Mechanical Monk moved people because its creators studied how slight hesitations and organic gestures build trust. Modern disinformation campaigns succeed through similar nuances: the misplaced pause in a politician's speech, the grainy authenticity of fake footage. Recognizing this, ethical hackers now use the Brotherhood's playbook in reverse, exposing deepfakes by highlighting the uncanny precision that betrays them, just as humidity shifts once betrayed the Whispering Saints' acoustic tubes. What endures isn't just their techniques, but their philosophy, that ideas are living things evolving to survive hostile environments. When Chinese artists embed protest symbols in traditional paper cuttings or Russian journalists disguise investigative reports as cooking shows, they're walking the same tightrope the Brotherhood mastered, balancing revelation with survival. Their statues stand as monuments to adaptability, proving that sometimes the most revolutionary act isn't shouting truth to power, but stitching it into the tapestry of the everyday where it can wait, patient and persistent, for the right moment to emerge. The story of these clandestine engineers doesn't just belong to the past. It's a mirror reflecting our own relationship with technology and secrecy. Think about it. In an age where innovation was often met with suspicion, they found a way to push boundaries by disguising progress as tradition. Their statues weren't just clever contraptions, they were acts of quiet defiance, proving that sometimes the most revolutionary ideas survive not by confronting authority head-on, but by blending into the background until the world is ready to see them. Today, as debates rage over AI ethics and data privacy, their legacy feels eerily prescient. Like those medieval artisans, modern innovators still wrestle with how much to reveal, when to hide, and how to balance creativity with caution. There's a deeper lesson here about the nature of ingenuity itself. The Brotherhood's greatest breakthroughs didn't come from unlimited freedom. They emerged precisely because of the constraints forced upon them. When the Church frowned upon machines that mimicked life, they responded by making those machines indistinguishable from sacred art. Limitations became their muse. It's a reminder that some of history's most brilliant inventions, from Galileo's telescopic discoveries to the encrypted messages of World War II, were born from necessity, not convenience. Their work whispers to us across the centuries. Creativity thrives not in spite of obstacles, but because of them. What's equally fascinating is how their legacy continues to surface in unexpected ways. Recent conservation efforts at a Swiss monastery uncovered a previously overlooked statue of Saint Barbara, her tower-shaped reliquary hiding a miniature forge capable of smelting precious metals. Meanwhile, digital reconstructions of the Prague Orlog's original mechanisms reveal gear ratios that shouldn't have been mathematically possible for another 200 years. Each discovery peels back another layer, showing us that the Brotherhood's technical prowess may have been even more advanced than we imagined. Yet for all their mechanical genius, their true mastery lay in understanding human nature. How a well-timed miracle could inspire, how a coded gesture could unite, and how the allure of mystery could protect truth better than any lock and key. As we close this chapter, consider how differently history might remember these engineers if their secrets had been lost entirely. Without the statues, the clocks, the trembling hands of saints, we'd have no proof that such brilliance existed in an era we often mislabel as backward or superstitious. Their story challenges us to look closer at the artifacts we take for granted, because sometimes the most extraordinary truths are hiding in the most ordinary places. Who knows what other marvels might be waiting, disguised as mere decoration, in the corners of our own world? If this journey through hidden gears and silent rebellions has sparked your curiosity, don't let it end here. Share your thoughts below. What historical mysteries should we unravel next? And for those who want to keep exploring the shadows where art and innovation collide, hit that subscribe button. The past is full of secrets still waiting to tick back to life.